everyone and welcome back. 안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. This is Jiwon and you are listening to Understanding Korea one story at a time where we talk about Korean history, culture, and the very specific ways they quietly shape everyday life. Before we begin, I heard earlier this week a massive blizzard slammed parts of the US Northeast. Some of you faced power outages, treacherous roads, and freezing temperatures. I truly hope you and your loved ones stayed safe and warm during those long hours. And as we sit down to talk about the deep Korean philosophy of warmth today, I hope this story brings a little bit of extra heat to your heart, helping you feel just a bit warmer as you recover from the record-breaking cold outside. Today's episode goes with this week's newsletter, but I promise, even if you read every word of that piece, you will still find the things here that are not in the text. That's kind of the whole point. The newsletter is the map, this is the walk. And today, we are walking on a very warm floor. I want to start with something our dear listener said. She left her comment on last week's podcast, saying that two things in Korean drama had always stood out to her. One, Koreans eating soups that are still visibly aggressively boiling at the table. And two, the way plain warm water appears whenever someone is sick, heartbroken, panicking, or simply exhausted. In so many shows, the warm water comes first, before advice, before pep talk, before anything else. And she said she was fascinated by both. I loved that comment because she basically found their own ramp to the entire Korean warmth worldview without even trying. Because those two details, the volcanic soup and the warm water, lead us straight to one of the most confusing, delightful Korean phrases for non-Korean speakers. 시원하다. Now, if you look that up in a dictionary, the first translation you will see is cool or refreshing. This makes absolutely no sense to an English speaker. How can boiling soup be cool? But that is exactly the point. In Korean, 시원하다 often isn't describing the temperature. It's describing the effect, relief, clearing, something loosening, something opening, something finally moving the way it's supposed to move. If you've ever eaten something spicy and felt your sinuses suddenly open up, if you've ever had a big cry and then felt that strange calm afterward, if you've ever felt blocked and then all at once your body releases, that's the emotional territory of 시원하다. And this is also why Koreans can sulk in a steaming hot bathhouse, come out red-faced, and say, completely sincerely, 시원하다. They don't mean cool, as in cold. They mean cleared out, unclenched. My body can breathe again. It's temperature language used to describe restoration. And once you understand that, a lot of Korean care culture starts to make a different kind of sense. And today, I want to suggest something a little unusual. That idea, warmth as a restoration, and not just comfort, was built quite literally into the Korean floor. So yes, today we are talking about ondol. And we are also talking about why so many Koreans, even those of us who live far away now, still carry warmth like an instinct. Growing up in Korea, I heard wear warm clothes, of course. But I also heard something else just as often. Sit somewhere warm. Don't sit on something cold. And I didn't fully understand how deep that ran until I became the adult saying it. I live in America, but my mouth still speaks fluent Korean mom. I hear it come out of me around my daughter in the most random places: stone steps, swimming pool locker rooms, ice rink bleachers. When she sits down on something cold, my body reacts as if she just sat down on a bad decision. If you're listening and thinking, that sounds dramatic, yes, it is. That's why it's interesting. So let's talk about the thing that makes that line make sense. In this week's newsletter, I introduced Ondol, Korea's traditional on-the-floor heating system. But I want to spend a little more time here because I think Ondol is one of those things that sounds like a fun fact, but is actually a civilization level decision. Let me paint the picture. You have a Korean house, traditional style, and in the kitchen there is an agungi, a hearth. You light a fire there, and that fire does two things at once. It hits the cooking pot above, and it sends heat through a network of channels that runs underneath the entire floor. Those channels lead to flat stones, 구들장, that observe the heat and hold it, slowly, steadily for hours. By the time the smoke and heat finally exit through the chimney on the far side of the room, the floor has already taken what it needs. And that floor stays warm, not hot, warm, the way a body is warm. Now compare that to a fireplace or a radiator, which hits the air. The air is warm, but the floor is still cold. And in a Korean home, the floor is where you live. You sit on it, sleep on it, eat on it. So the floor being warm is not a preference. It's the whole system. One researcher actually studied this. What temperature feels best when your body is in contact with an ondol floor? The answer was around 32 to 33 degrees Celsius. That's roughly 90 to 91 degrees Fahrenheit at the surface. Not hot enough to be uncomfortable, warm enough that your body just settles. It's the temperature of something that wants to hold you. Modern Korean apartments still have ondol. Instead of stone and fire, it's hot water pipes running under the floor. But the principle is the same. And here is something that still surprises non Koreans. In Korea, you control your floor temperature separately from your air temperature. You can have the air conditioning on in summer and the floor heat on at the same time. This sounds absurd until you've experienced it. And then it sounds like the only logical way to live. In traditional Ondo rooms, heating was not always perfectly even. There were warmer and cooler zones. And with that landscape, the warmest part of the room had a name, 아랫목. It's hard to translate without losing the feeling, but it's basically the hot spot, the seat of warmth. And here's the part people miss when they treat Ondo as a fun cultural fact. The 아랫목 had the social rules. The warmest place wasn't simply first come, first served. It belonged morally to the person who needed it most. If your grandmother was visiting and you were sitting on the 아랫목, you got up. That wasn't politeness. That was the architecture telling you what care looks like. The sick person, the elder, the honored guest. I love this detail because it shows how a physical system can carry a moral code. Warmth, in this context, wasn't just the comfort, it was something you gave. It was care made into a floor plan. There is a phrase in Korean that describes an entire life through the lens of the 아랫목. 아랫목에서 태어나 아랫목에서 자라고 아프면 아랫목에서 땀 빼고 늙어서도 아랫목에 누워 있다가 결국 제사상도 아랫목에서 받는다. Born on the 아랫목, grew up on the 아랫목, got sick and sweated it out on the 아랫목, grew old and lay on the 아랫목, and after that, the ancestral offering table, the food brought back to honor you, comes back to the 아랫목 too. The warmest spot in the house is where a life begins, and where it's remembered. That's not just heating. That's our whole philosophy. Warmth was a resource. Offering it was a care made physical, which means warmth was not only comfort, it was respect. A quiet way of saying, I see you and you can rest here. So when Korean caregivers obsess over warmth, they are not only chasing a cozy feeling, they are practicing something older. They are building an environment where the vulnerable body can recover. Now, here's the history part, which I think is genuinely fascinating. Ondol wasn't always universal in Korea. Early records, we are talking about Tang Dynasty Chinese chronicles, so around the 7th to 10th centuries, describe Korean commoners lying over heated channels to survive winter. It was described almost as a curiosity, something the poorer people did in the north. So Ondol started essentially as the poor person's survival strategy, not architecture, not culture, just we cannot afford to freeze. It stayed more regional, more class specific through much of the Goryeo period. But then something happened in the 17th century, the Little Ice Age. This was a period of global cooling that hit the Korean peninsula extremely hard. The Joseon dynasty ruled the Korean peninsula for over 500 years, from 1392 to 1897. And the records from that era describe winters so severe that the Han River froze solid for months at a time. Crop failures, famine, cold-related death that became a governing crisis. You can read accounts of officials debating what to do about the fact that people were dying of cold in what was supposed to be a temperature climate. And during this period, Ondo spread fast all over the country across class lines. By the time the Little Ice Age eased, Ondo wasn't a survival strategy anymore. It was just home. It had become so embedded in what a Korean house was that even when building styles changed, even when materials changed, even when Korea modernized and adopted Western apartment designs, the ondol stayed. That tells you something important. When a technology gets adopted during a survival crisis, it doesn't just solve the problem, it gets written into the culture. It becomes what normal feels like. That's why in 2018, Ondo culture was formally designated by the Korean government as National Intangible Cultural Heritage number 135. Some countries certify wines. Korea certified the floor. I love that detail because it sounds funny, but it also tells you something true. Ondo isn't just a heating method. It's recognized as a whole housing culture, a way of living that shaped habits, posture, and caregiving norms. Now, let's talk about where the architecture and the medicine connect. Korea's most important classical medical text is 동의보감. It was compiled in 1613 by a royal physician named Heo-jun under the instruction of King Seonjo. 25 volumes took years to complete. What made it unusual for its time, and I mean genuinely unusual, was its intention. Heo-jun wrote it not just for court physicians, but for ordinary people. He wrote in Korean alongside the classical Chinese. He used the medicinal plants that grew on the Korean peninsula, not expensive imported Chinese herbs. The idea was if you get sick and there is no doctor, this book should help you help yourself. Hejun's life was actually adopted into a legendary K-drama. If you watch Korean dramas, the 1999 series Hejun is a must-know. It reached a peak viewership of 64.8%, which still stands as a record for a Korean historical drama. It became a massive hit abroad as well, including, remarkably, in the Kurdish region of Iraq, where it aired 12 years after its Korean broadcast and hit 80% viewership. The lead actor, Jeon Kwang-yeol, was personally invited by the Iraqi First Lady to visit and ended up leading a traditional Korean medicine volunteer medical mission there. Iraq, to be clear, is a country the South Korean government officially designates as off limits for travel. The drama's reach got there anyway. A remake, Guam Hejun, aired on MBC in 2013, but the general consensus is that the original is the one worth watching. If you haven't seen it, consider this your recommendation. In 2009, UNESCO added 동의보감 to its Memory of the World Register. It was the first medical text in history to receive that designation. UNESCO specifically noted that it developed ideas of preventive medicine and public health that were, quote, virtually unprecedented up to the 19th century. So when I say Korean mothers have been passing down medical wisdom through household phrases, I mean that somewhat literally. Here's a section from the 동의보감. It's a set of 10 guidelines for raising a child. The 양자식법, 10 principles, and out of those 10, at least 5 are about temperature. Keep the back warm, keep the belly warm, keep the feet warm, keep the head cool, keep the digestive system consistently warm. And then, separately, always keep the stomach warm. If you grew up Korean, you just heard your mother's voice. Because that last one, always keep the stomach warm, that's what Korean parents have been saying to their children for 400 years. It's not folklore. It's a compressed medical tradition that learned to speak in household sentences. The deeper medical logic behind all of this has a name. 두한족열, cool head, warm feet. In Korean medical philosophy, the ideal state of the body is one where heat pulls in the lower half, the gut, the legs, the feet, and mild coolness stays near the head. This keeps ki, 기운, the body's vital energy in motion, flowing rather than stagnating, circulating rather than pulling. And here's what I find remarkable. Ondol, by design, creates exactly these conditions. Heat rises from the floor. Your feet and lower body are warmed first. Your head, higher up, stays relatively cooler. The architecture is literally implementing the medical principle. 동의보감 says it directly. Blood circulates when it receives heat. It coagulates when it meets coldness. And it isn't just a Korean idea. In the 17th century, a famous Dutch physician named Herman Boerhaave reportedly left a sealed book that claimed to hold the ultimate secret to health. When they opened it after his death, it contained just one sentence: keep your head cool and your feet and belly warm. Different continents, different centuries, but the same prescription. I want to spend a moment on something I addressed in the newsletter too, because I think it matters. When people in the West hear traditional Eastern medicine, there's sometimes a reflex. Interesting, but is it real? And I get it. There's a lot of content online that dresses up unverified claims in ancient sounding language. So I want to be clear about what Korean medicine, 한의학, actually is. It is a formal academic discipline taught in accredited universities, practiced by licensed physicians who complete medical school and pass board exams, actively researched. The Korean Institute of Oriental Medicine, KIOM, is a government funded research institution that publishes peer reviewed work. None of that means every traditional claim holds up under modern scrutiny. Some do, some don't. Some are genuinely uncertain. That's true of every field of medicine. But the conversation is happening. And the question I find the most interesting isn't ancient wisdom versus real science. It's where do they agree? Because on warmth, circulation, and the body's relationship to cold, the overlap is more substantial than most people expect. Okay, I want to get personal for a minute because this is the part that didn't make it into the newsletter. I drive a minivan. I know there are only 3 people in my family. The math doesn't really justify it, but here's what a minivan actually is in practice. In the cold season, one section of the back is basically devoted to warmth infrastructure. We have a big battery pack and 2 electric blankets. When I'm driving and my daughter is in the back, she uses one. If I pick up her friend, then both girls get a blanket like it's a business class. When my husband is driving, my daughter and I sit in the second row and use both blankets like we are on a Korean heated floor that happens to move at 60 miles per hour. And yes, we take the berry pack and blankets camping in the summer too. If you've ever camped in the mountains, you know that summer does not always mean warm. That berry pack makes the tent feel cozy even when the air outside is trying to argue. If you're thinking, is it safe to keep a battery pack in the car? Don't worry. My husband is a battery engineer. Battery safety is basically his love language. At work, at home, he takes this very seriously. I also keep 2 kinds of hot packs in the car, the stick on kind and the kind you shake and put in your pockets. The stick on ones are usually for me. The pocket ones are my daughter's favorite. And here's the part that makes me laugh. When I take my daughter and her friends to the park on a cold day, the kids now ask me first, do you have hot packs? Can I have one? They shake them, hold them, put them in pockets, and run off to play. My daughter now thinks it's normal that there is an electric blanket in the car and the warmth tools appear whenever it's cold. And sometimes I watch that and think, this is how culture transmits itself. Not as a lecture, not as identity, as a habit, as infrastructure, as what feels obvious. So, why are Koreans, as we sometimes get described, obsessed with warmth? Let me stack the pieces up for you. A climate that is genuinely historically dangerous in winter. A heating technology born out of survival that spread during one of the coldest centuries on record. A medical tradition that identified warmth as the condition for everything the body needs to do: circulate, digest, defend, recover. And a daily life built entirely around a warm floor where the warmest spot is given to whoever needs it most. From the outside, don't sit on the cold floor can sound like anxiety. From the inside, it's coherent. It's centuries of observation distilled into a sentence. Korean care isn't just about managing symptoms, it's about building an environment, creating conditions, making the background temperature of a life something the body can relax into. That's why hot soup can be 시원하다, not because it's cold, but because when it's exactly right, when it's what your body needed, the body exhales. 시원하다. There, that's it. And it's why even in America, even in a minivan, even on a cold Tuesday in a Seattle parking lot, when my daughter reaches into her pocket for a hand warmer, I feel something I couldn't quite name until I started writing about this. I feel like my floor is warm. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If something in today's episode stayed with you, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment, send a note. Take care and see you next week. 오늘도 들어주셔서 정말 감사합니다. 따뜻하게 잘 지내시고 다음 주에 만나요. Bye!